Hello there, fellow humans. I'm Jarrell. I'm a normal human being just like you, and I make video games for a living. I make homebrew games and commercial games. I make the homebrew games just for fun. It's a cool way for me to hang out with people who support my commercial games. I can show my appreciation for you guys, and we can make a bunch of cool stuff for old legacy platforms. So today we're taking a look at Ghoul Busters, which I launched on the 3DS first, and then I improved it, brought in some cool features, and put that on the Nintendo Switch by popular demand. People always ask me about the soundtracks for my games, so today I want to share with you the process of how I made the soundtrack for Ghoul Busters. So obviously this game is supposed to be inspired by Game Boy era games. Ooh, okay, I don't want to die. I'm getting a little distracted trying to not get killed here. Oops. Okay, you know what? I've got a safe spot. I think I'll wait here and then I'll wait here where it's nice and safe. Let's squish this guy. Okay, so what's important to me is that I try to follow the design philosophies for the most part. I try to follow the restrictions. So even though you see like 3D models for the trees in the background, everything is restricted to a very specific color palette. These fog effects that you see here and the sort of the shadows and the moonlight that you see are enhancements that I added to the Switch version, but you could disable those if you would like. They just help the game look really cool, and that's what it comes down to. So for the really true retro experience, you can turn off the special effects in the game, because it's entirely of 4 shades of green, and so it's a challenge trying to maintain an interesting look while making things clear. So part of that process means that the music and the sound effects also need to adhere to the design philosophy of the Game Boy. And the best way that I could think to do that was to actually create the soundtrack on Game Boy hardware. So normally with my soundtracks, I use a digital audio workspace called Studio One, and I either use synth instruments and synth voices that I can program and customize, or I use acoustic instruments, many of which I actually create myself whole cloth. I either modify instruments or just build them. This is one that I just built from scratch, so I can have unique sounds, unique voices, and as a composer and as a musician, it also allows me to explore different sounds and create interesting music for people, as opposed to just relying entirely on synths. So depending on the game and the context and the story of each Silver Falls game, there is a different kind of mixture between synthesized voices and acoustic instruments. But for this game, I'm style matching the Game Boy era, so I specifically wanted to make sure this is what a Game Boy game would sound like. There's no way where I could overstep the boundaries because I programmed it and I ran it on actual Game Boy hardware. I'll show you the program that I use, and it is called Milky Tracker. And this was a challenge because I've never used a tracking program before, so I was learning on the fly. I did a Game Boy game called Silver Falls Galaxy Bound Curse, which you can download for free and play on any emulator or Game Boy hardware if you have a flash cartridge. That's where I got some experience. The soundtrack on that is on the weak side because I was still learning how to use this. And this is so difficult. This is not something that you just open and then it makes sense to you. It takes a while to really figure out how to use it because you're not playing notes, you're programming them in. It's so different for a composer who's accustomed to working in a traditional digital audio workspace. So that pumps out a file which you can use in your Game Boy game. So I ran that through the Game Boy, and so this tracker is actually able to make music for actual Game Boy games. You can use GB Studio for free to make whole Game Boy games, and it was so exciting knowing that I'm going to make real Game Boy music and I'm going to use it in this game. So that's why Ghoul Busters has such a genuine sound. It never oversteps its boundaries because I have stayed as close to the limitations of the Game Boy as possible, because the soundtrack is actually programmed for Game Boy hardware. So that's one of the methods I use for my music to ensure that I want to make sure all of my games have their own unique identity, not just visually, not just in terms of gameplay or storyline or mechanics, but the music as well. And I want people to be able to enjoy the music. So that's just a little bit of the process. The soundtrack is now available It's been available since last year, I think, but I think I didn't really tell people that much about it. So you can get the full soundtrack for Ghoul Busters, but it's not available in the standard way. It's only available as a Game Boy ROM. So you can go ahead, check the link in the description for my itch.io, and you can download the Game Boy ROM. It's free. You can donate a couple bucks or two if you'd like to support me as a developer. But the Game Boy ROM has a little bit of a playable area that actually serves as a prologue to Ghoul Busters. So if you've played Ghoul Busters, you enjoyed it. If you play the soundtrack on your Game Boy, it actually it tells a little bit of the story after the end of Ghoul Busters. So it's a prologue and it's a soundtrack, and you can listen to the Ghoul Busters music on actual Game Boy hardware. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Head over to the itch.io. It's free, grab it, and you can check out my other homebrew games as well. Thanks for watching. Okay, I have to run. I've got a ton of work I need to do on my upcoming game. I'll be announcing that shortly. I'll be launching Clash of Ball on more platforms. Thank you to everyone who's been waiting for the game to launch on Steam and Atari VCS. There's like a lot of legal stuff, tax stuff, and business stuff. It's boring. You don't want to hear about it. But it's just time consuming. It's kind of annoying, especially since I'm a solo developer and I'm juggling so many different tasks. The business side, the legal side, that part's not cool or fun, but it's got to be done. So take care, everyone. I'll share more news with you soon, and I have more game development analyses coming soon. Okay, be well. I'll see you. I'm so grateful to my Patreon supporters whose names you can see on the screen. Thank you so much to my supporters both in the past and the present. It's because of you guys I've been able to keep my studio running. I can keep making games, and when we have a good month of sales on my commercial games, then I can spend more time doing homebrew games. I am now creating royalty-free soundtrack packs that you can use in your games, your short films, your YouTube videos. I'll be selling those online, but my Patreon supporters will have free access to all of those soundtrack packs. So I hope you enjoy those and have fun. And on screen you can see a couple of my latest games on the Nintendo Switch, but I will be launching new games soon as well. I'm always working very hard on new games. So if you'd like to check those out, please feel free. Thank you, take care everyone, and hopefully I'll have some more cool stuff to share with you soon.